Hey guys, welcome to my new video. Today I will show you my Ayamiya OTK deck build, and let's get straight into it. But before, I want to tell you there is a timeline below, so if you are searching for something particular, you can do it there. Yeah, let me explain what OTK means. OTK means one turn kill. That means you try to kill all the enemy heroes in just one turn, and that's very powerful. I want to explain to you. You try to get Yoimiya's burst as fast as possible. You do it if you just attack 2 times with your normal attacks, so you can stack up the energy. And if you have the energy, then you're going to swap over to Ayaka. If you swap over to her, she will get a cryo infusion for her normal attacks. And if she has that, you can just normal attack, and you will deal cryo damage. And after that, Yoimiya's burst will kick in and do 1 pyro damage. That means you will trigger the melt reaction, and she will do additionally 2 damage. So in total you have 5 damage dealt. And you can like repeat this over and over again with this deck build. The pyro agent is here for the pyro resonance, so you can use these cards, which will produce you 1 pyro die. And yeah, of course he is also a pretty good tank if you want to be careful and switch over to the agent just to protect your Yoimiya or your Ayaka mainly. Over to the next point. Yeah. Let's talk about the starting hand. This NRE is the first priority. Then I would say it's Paimon. And then I would say it's drawing cards. So it would be 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and because you have only 1 of this, I would pick this one as well. So you'll have 5 cards in your hand. You could also consider to keep Gambler, although I think it's not that necessary, but to be safe you can keep it. This would be the perfect starting hand. Let's go over to how you would play on your first round. Let's assume you have the cards I have just talked about, and you would of course use your 0 cost cards, and you would use your Paimon, right? And you would use your NRE. So using NRE and Paimon would already cost you 5 dice. So that means you have only 3 dice left for an auto attack with Yoimiya. If you played NRE, then you will get a food card. Maybe you will get this one. If so, then that's great, because you can use it, and Yoimiya will only use 2 dice to attack with 1 normal attack, right? So you'll have 1 attack, or not 1 attack, you will have 1 die left. If you have 1 die left on your first round, you can swap over to the Fatui Pyro Agent. If you think like, okay, maybe Yoimiya wouldn't survive if I would end my turn like this, because the enemy can attack 2 times or 3 times, and you still need to use Yoimiya for 1 auto attack and 1 burst, so she could die beforehand, right? Another possibility is that you use her normal attack 2 times in the first round, and that you have only maybe 1 Paimon, then that's also okay. On the second round, you will either try, if you haven't full energy, you will try to attack once more, so you have full energy, or if you already have full energy, you will use her burst, of course. After that, you can try, it depends on the situation, that's why the second round is even more complicated to explain. You can either try to use 1 or 2 attacks with Ayaka, or if you don't have enough dice, you can swap over to the Pyro Agent and just tank till the 3rd round. Meanwhile, if you do so, if you want to go safe, and that's it's also a good strategy to go safe, it's sometimes better than going risky. You can use other cards like the Paramedic Transformer, or you can use Gambler just to use your dice, you know, so you won't waste them. Of course you can use something like this as well. Yeah. And on the 3rd round, it's even more easy. You just swap over to Ayaka. Maybe if you can manage it, you don't start first and the enemy starts first. That would be better, because then the enemy would use a dice or 3 dices while you haven't used any. yet, so Ayaka won't take so much damage. Well, you can swap to Ayaka and then start doing auto attack, well, normal attacks, and yeah, do a lot of damage. Of course, you should use this card before you start attacking with Ayaka, so her normal attacks costs just 2 dice. This card is very important. Otherwise, yeah, and if you do it like that, you should normally usually win the game. Of course, it's always situational, and you have to watch out which combinations or what kind of decks the enemy has, but this is the way it usually works, and you can still check out my video before I posted yesterday, so yeah, to see an example. Last but not least, let's talk a little bit about some general tips and tricks, some advice I want to give you. Maybe it is hard to know this if you are a new player or new to TCG games. The NRE is a very great card in this deck. As I told before, it's the priority number 1. If you have it, you have to keep it. It's so important, because if you play this card, like I said, you will choose, or not choose, you will draw one random food event card, right? And if you have done that, especially if you have picked this up, this Northern Smoked Chicken, I would recommend you to spend it. Just spend it. You don't have to care about if it is of any use. Just spend it so the effect can trigger again. Because if you play this card, the NRE, you will draw one food event card. If you play one food event card, then you can draw another food event card. So that means you can get your deck slimmer, so you don't waste at the start of a round when you're drawing 2 cards, you don't waste these cards, or most likely you're not going to waste these cards to be a food card, because if you have NRE, you don't have to draw any food cards from your deck when the round begins. Yeah. And the next one is, if you have this one as your starting hand, try not to use it at the beginning. I would even say try to use it at the end of round 2, because if you use it too fast, it could trigger pretty fast, because like I said, you can trigger it and your enemy can trigger it as well. And if you finish your turn, so you can't do anything anymore, and your enemy, your opponent, attacks one time, and it triggers this Paramedic Transformer to have 3 stacks, then you will get 3 random dices, which are, well, wasted because your turn is already over, and yeah, they will all going to waste. So be very careful when you're going to use the Paramedic Transformer. Another tip I want to give you is, I made a mistake because a lot of cards have, well, this thing like this once per round, right? I thought this card, I haven't lost yet, has a similar, well, thing to it, because, but it isn't like that. If your character dies and you have 2 of these cards in your hand, you can use them immediately, both of them, and you will get the effect. You will get 2 Omni element dices, and you will get 2 energy for your active character. So it's a very, very strong card. And yes, this one, I want to tell you, if you have 2 of these cards in your hands, sometimes it happens, think twice about using it immediately. Most of the time, of course, you can use it one time, one card, but think about it if you want to use the other strategized card as well, if you have both of them at the same time in your hand. Think about it, if you, how should I say it, if you plan to do maybe like play NRE or play Paimon, right? It could be that you haven't enough dice left if you play both of them, because both this card uses 1 die, so be very careful with it. Well, let me tell you at the end the cards which are pretty optional. If you want to do some changes to this deck, then you can think about When the Crane Returned. This one is optional. This one is optional. It's all about protecting your Ayaka, mainly. So you can change these cards, these 2 cards. I wouldn't recommend to change the Flower Crisp. but you can change this one, and you can change, of course, this one. There will be some games where you are not going to use this card or this card. So these are the two cards which I would say are optional, and if you want to change more cards, then you could change, but I wouldn't recommend to change Chef Mao. And, well, I wouldn't recommend it as well, but Timmy gets useless if you are going to, or if you try to finish the game in the third round. And if you draw him on the third round, or even on the second round, he gets pretty useless. But at least you can use him as fodder, right? So that's about it, and I hope I have explained everything. But if I have forgotten something, or if you have any questions about the deck and about how to play it and so on, then yeah, let me know in the comments. And see you next time.